And we're gonna start holding it. Perfect.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Louise Fiore.
And I'm Ina Shapovalov,
We're two attorneys who know that legal talk can be stressful.
but it doesn't have to be.
That's why we're grabbing a beer
Looking back,
and having a real conversation about immigration and business law.
no fancy words, no pressure.
Just a relaxed space to talk about the things that matter to you.
Beer was brought to the US by immigrants, just like so many good ideas, businesses, and traditions.
So, in the spirit of making things a little easier,
Keep calm
take a sit
and let's talk law
without
without
the
the
stress.
stress. Hmm. So let's get started. First, maybe we should mention our beers first.
Well, I think the beers were chosen with today's topic in mind. So we have Florida Man, and today we're going to be discussing the new law that went into effect in July July
July
1st.
1st.
And then mine is Shock Top because after this podcast, we hope that we don't shock you into the issues that notarios may have onto your cases, your immigration cases, which this new law aims to undermine, hopefully.
So, what is this law that went into effect?
So, on July 1st, we have a new Florida law that now allows for immigrants to seek civil remedies against notarios. Notarios are known to not be licensed attorneys in the United States. Many of them will help immigrants with their immigration forms, their immigration process, whether it be in court or through the asylum office or through USCIS or USIS, as many people call. They're not licensed US attorneys. So they typically charge a lesser fee because there's no malpractice insurance. There used to be really no recourse if they didn't do things properly. Where us, as attorneys, there is recourse if we don't do things properly for you. Um, Typically, a lot of them will be attorneys in their home country and they will purport to you, well, I am an attorney, but they'll leave out the fact that they're an attorney in South America or Europe or not in the US. So this law basically says that if you are what we call a notario, and you are helping with these services, you have to make sure or advertising that you're going to be helping immigrants with these services. You have to put on your website that you are not a licensed US attorney. You have to put in any contract they have you sign with them that they are not a US attorney. If they don't do that, and you're under the impression that they're an attorney, minus the not in the US part, you do have the ability to then sue them civilly for any harm that happened to you through the course of your immigration process because you trusted them.
So, I want to talk a little bit about what makes a notario. How are they different from a lawyer? A lot of people get really confused, but they're not lawyers because in many countries the word notario um, it
Notary.
means that they're a notary and they have to have a particular legal education, and most of them have a legal education. They're lawyers. Here, notaries don't have to have any special education. I think it's high school is the minimum, I believe, something like that.
GD.
Yeah, a high school degree or GED, which is like nothing. And there's a little course they have to take. Now it's an online course. I think it takes a couple hours, but besides that, nothing. So these guys or women or men, whatever, these people, they don't study the law, American laws. They have no test that they have to take that lets them, test them on how well they know the laws in the United States. Nothing. All they're allowed to do by law is witness your signature and notarize your signature by checking your ID and saying, oh, I swear that I see this person signing this document. And what else are they allowed to do?
Well, that's really it.
Yeah.
Now with this law, they can still help you just like they've been able to in the past with, your immigration paperwork, your immigration forms. There is a box on the G28, which is your notice of appearance for USCIS, where it allows you to say, I'm not a US attorney. It's more formal than that, but that's the gist of it. They would just check that and, be
Well,
allowed.
yeah, but actually, I don't think they can enter a G28 unless they've been accredited with either EOIR or USCIS with a
Well, if
government
they have an
agency.
LLM degree, they can. So
Okay.
that's where, okay, so let's backtrack
Mhm.
because you are correct. That's where it gets tricky. A lot of notarios, not a lot of them, let me rephrase that. Some notarios will have been or will be an attorney in their country. They'll have taken a LLM, which is basically a master's in law, but they will have not taken any
Mhm.
form of state bar. So they're not an attorney. They basically have a degree as an attorney. And that will allow them
Mhm.
to enter their notice of appearance as a notario with an LLM degree, but they are still not a licensed, state licensed, for our example, Florida attorney or New York
Mhm.
attorney.
Right. And for us as lawyers to get licensed, we have to go to 3 years of law school, take the bar exam in whichever state we want to practice in, or multiple states if we're going to get licenses from multiple states. And we have to register with a bar association. We have to pay dues every year. And they check up on us to see how we're doing, that we're following all the rules, and there are certain rules that we have to stick to. And if you have a problem, if we mess something up, or do something wrong, people will go right and file a complaint with the bar, and then the bar will discipline us and look at, investigate whether we really did something wrong or not. Notaries don't have any of that.
Exactly. And that is the biggest thing that I find important to really understand. We are held to a specific standard. If we mess up, you can come after us. You can file a bar complaint against us, and that will have repercussions to us. If a notario messes up, there is no recourse for you. And courts, especially right now, immigration courts are not going to take pity on you. They're not going to say, "Oh, well, you got a notario, so it is what it is. Let's start over,"
Right.
right? You show up at your individual hearing, your last hearing, your big hearing, for the judge to decide if they're going to grant your asylum, and you have an entire story that this notario came up with that you did not greenlight and was not really the basis for your asylum, you're stuck with that. And the judge can order you removed based on the fact that your story is not a real story. So now you have a fraud issue. And you don't get to file anything against that person to say, hey, I was hurt. This law counteracts that, where you can come after them civilly for
Mhm.
that, but you're still being ordered removed.
Right. And so one of the ways that I know let's say a potential client comes to me and they say, well, did someone help you with your paperwork? Yeah, it was a lawyer. Okay, great. So do you have a copy of your paperwork? No, I don't. And I never received the receipt. Okay, those are like red flags right there. So they don't give you copies of your paperwork. A lot of times they'll have put their own office address as their address, but because they're not entering an appearance always, then you don't get a copy. I mean, the client doesn't get a copy, but they get it and they don't always forward it. That's one way. What's another way is even they bring me copies of their paperwork. Nobody's signed as the preparer. It doesn't have
That
it's
happens,
blank
yeah.
in there, right?
Or the interpreter. And
Right.
that's an important aspect too,
Oh yeah.
because if you only speak Spanish and you have an entire form in English, there's a box where you're supposed to say that your best language is Spanish, and there's a box where the interpreter has to certify that they read everything that was in this application in English, they read it to you in your language, Spanish, and you understood it. That's going to ensure that whoever's receiving it knows that you verified it, that you understood what's in that application.
Yeah, and now, they forget to check a box that's important to check. And it used to be that you could go and say, oh, I was scammed. This person, took my money. I believed that they were doing the right thing. But really, the rules in immigration have changed, and immigration courts, particularly, and not even USCIS, are going to pity you for that. It's going to be much more difficult, let's put it this way, to get to get a benefit when you use someone like that, because that application is going to be, a lie, and you can't blame the person who did it for you. You're going to be blamed yourself. So if whoever it was, the notario, filled something out wrong, or made something up, or even just made a mistake, and put down your middle name was Maria and not Josefina, whatever it is, then you know what? That's up to you. You're supposed to read that paperwork and review it. And if they haven't given it to you to read and review before you signed it, just say, okay, here, sign this. Then now immigration is going to think you intentionally lied by, putting the wrong middle name in. All you're trying to, hide who you are, or hide, a past incident from immigration, or whatever the case is. So they're, you as the client, you as the person applying for the immigration benefit, you're going to be the liar and not the notary who filled out the forms for you.
And that's very important because under this administration, I have had this experience where I have had to amend applications that came in that were done through Notarios. And these weren't just a small wrong middle name. This was Notario, I guess, got lazy and just copied a story from another file onto my client's application, and was not at all the persecution that he suffered. And we went and amend, and I had a little tough time with the master, where, the judge gave my client a hard time because it was, well, you signed the application. So, okay, there's no interpreter signature, there's no prepared signature, but there is your signature. So at what point did you tell that person, hey, I don't understand what's on this piece of paper that you're having me sign? At what point did you start asking questions? And I had a sweetheart of a judge, and I still had a hard time. So where you're going to have tougher judges, there is a probability that that amendment will not be accepted. And then you'll, like you said, you'll have a credibility issue of you're lying, and they may just dispose of your application right then and there and say, we're not going to move forward with your asylum petition because you just admitted that everything here is incorrect, or the middle name is incorrect, and you didn't read it, which leads me to believe everything else is incorrect.
Exactly. If there's one mistake on here, how do we know there's not 1,000 mistakes?
That's something we hear a lot.
Right, exactly. So let's say somebody hired, one of these notarios to fill out an application. So what can go wrong specifically? Like, what is the biggest problem it can get you into?
Well, my beer overflowing might be a problem, but I think we're good. So there are a lot of things, right? So one, like we just covered, your application for relief or for a benefit, depending if you're with USCIS or court, might just be canceled completely, and then too bad, so sad. If your plan was to seek asylum, you now can't seek asylum. So that's one issue. The other issue, which a lot of people don't consider, is you could end up being detained. Not just ordered removed, but detained pending your proceedings. They could fill out a petition with USCIS and fill it out incorrectly, and that petition now gets denied, and now you have nothing pending, and now ICE has the ability to detain you and place you in removal proceedings if you weren't in removal proceedings before.
But that's actually a really great point here, because now, and this happened under the first Trump administration too, people who applied to USCIS for an extension of status, a change in status, if that, or anything, adjustment of status even, but if that petition got denied, then under the current administration, as well as under the previous Trump administration, USCIS was told to, okay, once you deny and you see that based on the denial, the person's now out of status, then file that NTA, that notice to appear, which is the paper that sends the person into removal proceedings, into immigration court, in order to start the process of deportation.
This Trump administration, I feel like, has taken one step further, because now They're doing exactly what you said.
Mhm,
USCIS is drafting the
mhm.
NTA and basically saying, well, you have no other relief that you're out of status, we can draft the NTA. But in some instances, they can notify ICE, and ICE can come directly to that interview and already pick you up right then and there. So now not only are you placed in removal proceedings, you're detained during your removal proceedings.
Right, because USCIS sees a badly prepared case. They know they're going to deny the case. So now they can say, okay, come on in, we'll interview. And what the ICE agent officer is waiting there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
So there will be plainclothes ICE agents waiting in the lobby, and you might not catch them because they're in plainclothes, and they already know who you are, and they already know you're going to be NTA'd, and they already know they can pick you up. So it is a scary time where you have to be if you're going to apply for something, if you're going to combat deportation proceedings, if you're going to avoid detention, you really, really have to do it right from the beginning. Because if you don't, you're really giving this administration any opening to have the basis to detain you and deport you.
So let me ask you, let's pretend that I am an immigrant. Well, I am an immigrant, but let's pretend that I'm an immigrant and I came here on a visitor visa. My visa is expired. I've been waiting for a little luck, maybe meet the right person, get married, I don't know what. And now all of a sudden, I see all the social media stuff about people getting deported, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? And I go and, my cousin tells me, um, because it's always the cousin, right?
This
My
is true.
cousin tells me, yeah, go see this lady. She's a lawyer, well, from Spain, but she fills out papers, she fixed me, and I do, and they tell me, oh, you know what, you should apply for asylum. Your country is kind of a bad country, and so you should do this. Here, help me. I'll fill out the application, you submit it, and then you're safe from being deported and detained, at least until you have your asylum hearing, which is going to take 7 years, so you can get your work permit this way. Is this a safe thing to do?
No, it's not, and please don't do it. So, yeah, that's first of all, what is the basis for you applying for asylum? You need to have a real basis, right? It can't just be, I don't like my country and I want to
There's a
stay here.
travel warning. The State Department has
Oh,
a
okay. So there's a travel warning. So, okay.
yeah,
And how long have you been here? Like 7 years?
right.
Okay. So you're filing well above the 1 year time period. Now you have to show an exceptional circumstance about why you didn't file the first year you entered. Your exceptional circumstance is Trump is detaining everyone and deporting them, and I'm scared. And there's a travel warning for my country. Those are not exceptional circumstances. So
Right.
don't do that.
That's a travel warning for American citizens not to go to your country. That doesn't mean that it's not safe for you to return. There's a big difference between that.
The other thing in your hypothetical is that you'll be safe while that asylum is pending from being detained. You are not safe. You have no visa. Your B1, B2 visitor visa has expired. So you are out of status. So ICE can pick you up with or without that asylum pending. So don't do that. No, speak to an attorney. And in some cases, I have had clients who hadn't filed within the 1 year deadline and all of those things, but they had very specific exceptional circumstances. And there were specific events that happened in their country that aligned with their specific exceptional circumstance. It like all the facts aligned together where we could do a 1 year late brief argument. We could um pres presumpt I can't say the word, but on its face, we could show that there was well-founded fear of future persecution. So in that scenario, in that hypothetical, you tell your cousin, oh, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to a licensed attorney and see if they think that, what the attorney from Spain said is really something I should do, and go from there.
Right, because let's say you're one of those countries where you had TPS, because they give TPS to countries where the situation is bad. And so TPS is almost like an alternative to individual asylum petitions because maybe a bad situations, but it's not like individually every single person from that country is going to be persecuted, but it's just bad conditions and a mess, and the government decides you shouldn't be going back at the moment. So let's say you're from one of the countries where they had TPS and you have TPS revoked, like it's canceled everywhere. So but maybe the reality is you were here when TPS and you did some protesting in your country. You did, or even after you got here, maybe you got on social media and wrote lots of really bad stuff about the government of your country, calling them dictators and bad names, and went to protest and were very, very public about it. And maybe you already know people who've been returned to that country and thrown into jail and had the keys locked for doing the exact same thing. Those are cases where you should be able to apply for asylum, but you need to review that with a licensed lawyer experienced in immigration law and particularly a humanitarian law and asylum law, to know whether that's still not going to keep you 100% safe from detention.
No.
But it's going to allow you to go forth on something in the event that you are detained.
Well, and also potentially give you relief, especially now with
Right,
TPS
right.
being TPS. It will at bare minimum give you the opportunity to potentially get a green card if your asylum is granted. So in that scenario, in that hypothetical, once you consult with an attorney, and again, it has to be very case specific to you and to your country and how that syncs together. But once you have that kind of strategy in place with a licensed attorney, then it will, like you said, not keep you from being detained, but it could be a route where you have a potential end goal of how to get your green card within the United States and eventually stay in the United States.
Right. So I think, basically nothing at this point is 100% safe against detention. I mean, maybe being a citizen and, even I've heard stories, but let's say basically becoming a US citizen would maybe save you from the risk of detention. So, but I think right now it's just a matter of nothing is going to 100% protect you, but to minimize the risk. And the better support you can have as far as lawyers, the better off you are. And if you come and go to one of these notarios, they're not going to give you that support. Right. So what happens if I go to that notary, they fill out this asylum form, boom, I'm detained, the judge doesn't believe me because there's mistakes all over the place on my form.
And you filed it 7 years
Right,
later based on a travel
exactly.
warning.
What do I do as far as what can I get based under this new law from
So
the notario?
civil remedies, you can again speak to a civil attorney, but still an attorney. You can speak to an attorney where you can essentially file a lawsuit against the notario and basically claim your damages. So I paid the notario $500 to fill out this application that ultimately resulted in me getting an order of removal. But then I hired an immigration attorney once I was detained and there was all these issues, and she would have charged me $5,000 for the case, but because of all these issues, she now had to charge me $10,000 for the case. So that difference of $5,000 right there is your remedy. It's your monetary damages. It's what you can claim that you want back.
Plus the $500.
Plus the $500 that you paid originally, plus whatever cost it is to now relocate back to your country. And plus whatever loss of wages you had while you were detained, because you're not working while you're detained.
Right.
So you can get what we call monetary damages. That would be your remedies in civil court. Yes, that is something that this law permits, and that is something that I do urge people to look into if they have been harmed through a notario. However, it does come with a really big caveat that you're not going to be able to use that to justify why your asylum was filled out the way it was filled out, or why your petition in general, doesn't have to be asylum, was filled out the way that it was filled out. obviously your immigration attorney
No.
can make
Mhm.
those arguments. And if the judge chooses at their discretion to listen to those arguments and allow you to amend whatever the petition was or fix whatever
Mhm.
mistakes or file for other relief that you would have had, that's amazing. But I don't want the takeaway to be like, oh, well, I can sue the notario, make money off of that, and still be able to secure my green card because of the notario. That doesn't go hand in hand.
Right. So, but I do have a lot of people who ask me when they see that whoever, the notario that they hired to do their work, um, made a mess. They go, "Can I get my money back?" And the answer is yes.
Yes, the answer is under this new law, you can get your money back. Depending on how much you spent, a lot of those would be resolved in small claims court, which will be faster, which is nice as opposed to 5-year litigation, which is typically civil law. So that is definitely a recourse.
And what about attorney's fees?
It
So,
also,
do I have to pay a lawyer to go and sue that notarial?
so in the law, the new law does allow for you to recuperate your attorney's fees that you paid your civil attorney. More often than not, those civil attorneys are going to charge you a fee up front. And then once you win the case, that's going to be part of your judgment. So you will receive that money back. And it is almost like an investment in being able to right the wrong that happened to you.
Mm-hmm. So, a couple other questions. What if the person is detained? Can they still have a civil lawsuit against someone?
Yes, yes, they can. Civil lawsuits, even if you are detained, you are able to file it. Obviously, get a civil attorney, not notario. Don't go from one notario to another notario.
Right.
And then through that attorney, they would be able to issue the summons for whoever you're suing and appear in court on your behalf and everything else. In rare situations where those cases require evidentiary hearing where you have to be present for, the civil courts will work with ICE where you would be able to appear via Zoom or WebNext if you are detained. So there are ways where you can still have that remedy.
And what if you've already been deported and you're back in your home country?
That one is an interesting question because legally, yes, you can file. You again, hiring a civil attorney is key in this situation because the civil attorney is still here, so the civil attorney would be able to go through the entire process with you. The question would be, how does that impact your damages and not so much how does that impact your ability to sue? So answer, yes, you can sue. The other side of that is how does that impact what you're going to recoup during that lawsuit?
Well, I guess the cost of moving is not if you've been deported, but if you have to go back and you moved voluntarily or something like that.
If you move voluntarily, you're not going to have that, right? So if you took voluntary departure, most
Mhm.
civil judges are going to say, well, that was a decision that you made. However, if you were deported, so let's go back to the hypothetical we did
Mhm.
earlier. The asylum application goes in front of the judge tosses it and basically says no. And now you have no relief, and the judge enters the order of removal on you. That wasn't voluntarily. You didn't sign for it, right? You now have an immigration attorney. That immigration attorney was like, please let me amend. They did it with the notario. We're suing the notario. The judge says, no dice. We don't care. It's not going to happen. We're tossing your asylum. You would be able to recruit those as part of your damages. But then if you sign voluntary departure because you find out that your asylum was never going to get accepted because you hadn't had a basis for it, then that's going to curb your damages because that was a voluntary action that you took.
All right, so I see this as you can get some of your money back, but not everything. This is definitely not a money-making scheme or, a way to make money. But at least if you were the innocent victim of one of these, notarius. You know what? They also call them paralegals a lot of times.
Oh,
And
yes.
that one of the things is, oh yeah, but it's not a lawyer, it's a paralegal. Oh yeah, yeah. I asked them, they said, yeah, they say they're not a lawyer. They said they're not a lawyer, but they said they work with a lawyer. If they're working with a lawyer, you better look at, who that lawyer is. If you haven't met that lawyer and you don't know the name and it's not on the business card, like, John Smith lawyer and law office of John Smith, and then Maria Fuentes paralegal. I just made that up. Um, if
Well,
that's not the case, then, and the lawyer for that, who the paralegal is working with, supposedly, should be signing off on your papers.
so that was what the point that I was going to make. They could work for a lawyer, and that lawyer has no idea that their side gig is doing these applications where they're collecting the fees for themselves. So Maria Fuentes is a paralegal for John Smith, but whenever Maria Fuentes is filling out your paperwork, John Smith has no idea. That would still fall under this law.
Right. Because
Because
she's doing it on Saturday and her boss has no clue, and she's just doing that on the side to make a little extra cash.
And under this new law, she has essentially misguided you, where she said, well, I work for John Smith, the attorney, but she left out the part that what she's doing is not through John Smith's review.
Right. Because John Smith, the attorney, would have to read everything she wrote, make sure that it's okay, make sure it fits, and sign off on the paperwork.
Now, the other thing I wanted to touch back on, and this kind of goes back to the
Mhm.
other point that you made about you may not make all of your money back, but you can make some of your money back. That is accurate. But I also think, and again, this is a personal opinion. This is not me saying for sure. I'm not the immigration judge. I don't work for the US government. But I do think it will strengthen your immigration case when you are working with an immigration judge and have retained civil legal counsel in these lawsuits, because it strengthens the case that you genuinely are an aggrieved party and you had no knowledge that the story that was placed on your asylum was incorrect, that you really weren't married to Joe and you really have never been married, that you don't have 5 United States citizen children. Because when you enter into a civil courtroom, it's still a courtroom.
And do you have to, when you file a lawsuit, you're swearing under penalty of perjury, right?
Exactly.
The facts are true.
So if you're writing a complaint suing Maria Fuentes, then you're saying, I did not know that Maria Fuentes put all of these things down. That is your complaint. You were swearing that to a court under perjury, which I think would make an immigration judge think twice in terms of accepting an amendment or not if you have that pending.
I agree with you. It would be, a credibility boost, a way to kind of a fancy word, exculpate, but not all the way. I don't think it's 100%,
No.
but it's a strong step, particularly with some judges, I think.
I agree.
Yeah. So, what if one more what I keep throwing what ifs at you. So what if though you sue Maria Fuentes for I hope there's no real person in Maria
if there
Fuentes.
is, we're not talking about you, Maria. I promise.
Fictional Maria. What if she doesn't have any money in her bank account to pay you back? She has a gambling problem and she's been at the casino and she spent all her money and her car is a lease and actually it's not even in her name, it's in her boyfriend's name and she has nothing. How are you going to get your money back?
That is a great question. And that is a big issue in civil litigation in general. So we call that person judgment proof. You have a judgment against them, but you have no way of collecting. The hopes, now judgments don't expire, right? So today, Maria is judgment proof, but tomorrow she may win because she has a gambling problem. So she hit big. So now she has money and she buys a house. You can attach that judgment to the house. In our hypothetical, Maria has a job at John Smith's law office. You can file a motion to garnish wages, where automatically from her paycheck, X amount of money is coming out to satisfy your judgment. And if those things happen, they will attach to interest. So if the judgment started, let's say, $5,000, it can even balloon up to $50,000, depending on how long it takes for you to get that money. So today, to answer your question, today you're probably not getting any money from Maria, but that piece of paper is still powerful and it's still worth something because at any point you can attach it to any future wages, bank accounts, property, and those things.
And one more. What if Maria Fuentes, when she did everything, she gives you a business card that's MF Consulting LLC, and she says, "Oh, but I'm an LLC." That's limited liability company. Liability is limited. You can only sue the company for its assets, and there's zero money in that
Oh,
LLC
now you've just
account.
made it interesting.
No,
So
I need to get
there's a
outside.
couple ways to play with this, right? So if Maria has an LLC and the contract that Maria had you sign is between her LLC and you, where again she doesn't explain that John Smith is not overseeing this, so she's still in violation of this new law. And you open a lawsuit, you can sue her LLC and potentially her personally because we have what's called piercing the corporate veil. If everything that you're doing, so first of all, LLCs are not protected for fraud and they're not protected for misrepresentation, gross misrepresentation. So I can't open an LLC to rob you of millions of dollars and then say, well, I have an LLC and the contracts are with
Right.
my LLC and that's that. It's not going to protect you against that. And also, so that's number one. So you're already not protected there. But to take it one step further, if she's using her LLC bank account to pay her personal FPL, pay her rent, personal housing rent, her personal cell phone, her personal car, now it's not an LLC anymore. It's really just her. So there are ways to navigate, and that becomes fun, especially when you get to like depositions where you're like, oh, well, you just deposited X amount of dollars into your LLC, but then you paid your sister $10,000 from your LLC, and they're like, yeah, I was just paying her back for a loan she gave me. Well, that's a personal loan. You just pierced the corporate veil right then and there. So there are ways around that. Do not think that just because it's a corporation especially an LLC, that you don't have recourse.
Right. Wow. So, what's the takeaway?
The takeaway is if you are going to file anything affiliated with immigration law, get an immigration attorney. If you have filed something and it's pending, it's not too late to get an immigration attorney. If you have filed something and it didn't go well because you did not file it with an immigration attorney and you went through a notario, call an immigration attorney and a civil attorney, or at least an immigration attorney that works with the civil attorney so that we can figure out what can be done for you in that circumstance.
Right. So you can't get all your money back, but you can get some. You can't completely get rid of the risk of detention, but you can manage it, minimize it. Yeah, and maybe you can get your way out of the problem.
Yes, but the key is call an attorney. That's it all starts there.
Right.
Anything that if you're getting some of your money back, if you're minimizing detention risk, if you're trying to get out of detention because of a notario situation put you there, whatever the situation is, it starts with you calling an attorney.
And I guess one last thing, how do you know that somebody is a real attorney?
Oh, so well, Florida Bar member search, guys. Google that. I send it to my clients sometimes when they're like, "Oh, well, how do I know that you're?" Because obviously, immigration attorneys we deal with people all over the world. I'll send them the link. I don't even send them my own information. I send them the link because I want them to put my info there so that they themselves see it. So in the state of Florida, if you Google Florida Bar member search, you can type in the person's name and it will show you if they're licensed, when they became licensed, if they had any disciplinary issues within the last 10 years, and if they're still active, if they're still paying their dues and part of the Florida Bar.
Exactly. And I think a lot of other states have that. A few states are a little bit more hidden about their bar information, but I think most states have that. In the worst case, you can always call the bar office of whatever state and they can help you out getting that information.
Exactly.
All right. Well then.
Well, so, cheers.
Cheers. And I got my Florida Man beer here from my Florida law.
I hope we didn't shock you, like I said.
Right.
Till next time.